Lance Armstrong, 7-time Tour de France winner, and we talked to him yesterday. First question I asked Lance, did you watch the Tour de France this year?
You know, some days there were. I follow it enough to know which days I think will be interesting, and so I'd turn it on in the morning and watch while I'm having breakfast. But a lot of times I couldn't watch the finish because it would. I was going to go out on my own ride or go out for my own exercise, so I followed it loosely.
Do you still have the yellow jerseys?
Oh yeah.
And where are they?
Which ones? I mean, they're over the years you basically get one every day. So most of those are stashed away at the house, but then the ones that I wore in Paris are all the ones that were framed up are still framed up and on the wall.
Oh, okay. So you get a yellow jersey every stage that you win. So you get to keep
every day that you maintain or keep the jersey. They, on the podium, they present you with one. The ceremony that they do after every stage, they'll present the current leader with a new jersey every day. So you basically keep all those.
What's the reaction when you go out riding now?
It's good. It just, I guess it depends. Most of the time, at least this summer, I've been riding mostly my mountain bike here in Aspen, and it's you just don't see a lot of people. You're out in public land, and come across people every now and again, and those folks are great. And then I've done a few more public cycling events that the reaction's has been positive as well.
What do we not know about your life now?
I don't know, Dan. I mean, it's been so, at least from my perspective, it's been so widely covered. I think we know pretty much everything. But what I would say about just from my view from the inside is that it's just pretty simple. I mean, it's not. There's not a lot of obligation outside of raising my 5 kids and looking after my family and looking after myself and being a really crappy golfer and trying to stay fit. But there's not a ton of work, there's not a ton of travel, and that's very different than it was before.
Could you have done it differently, given the way you're wired?
Mm-hmm. Which part?
Just the start. I mean, you survived testicular cancer. I mean, that alone is an amazing story. But then there had to be part of you that said it's not just riding in the Tour. I have to win the Tour.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, that was, and I think that I do think that the whole process of the disease and surviving the disease and being so motivated to ultimately win that battle, I did. I mean, I took that back into the sport, which I didn't have before. I mean, I viewed winning and losing as life and death, and I was going to do whatever it took to win, like a lot of other great champions. But my issue was that off the bike or in personal settings, sometimes they cross the line, and I didn't have that switch to turn it off. It's one thing to kick ass in training, kick ass in races, but it's you're sitting in a press conference. You don't need to kick ass. You just need to sit there and be humble and honest and direct and move on.
Could you have won without doping?
Well, that's a great question, but not in that era. No, I mean, I think most people recognize, especially the people that were on those battlefields, would agree that that was just it was an arms race at the time. It was a high octane era, and there were no tests. I mean, you couldn't detect certain things like you can now. No, certainly not at that time. I don't know about today, but I suspect you could today, but not from the late 80s to the mid 2000s.
What did it feel like when you dope? Like, what's your body do or tell you that's different than prior to that? The feeling.
I mean, it's not. We're not talking about Breaking Bad here. I mean, this is not like meth or something. I mean, it's.
But it's a difference maker. So what does it do?
Well, yeah, I mean, any time you're talking about, what went on at that time, things like EPO, which was the predominant drug of choice for I think all of us, or most of us certainly. I mean, it's a significant improvement. I mean, you're talking about 10%, so you do know that. I mean, you'd notice that with your power wattages, you'd notice that with your times, you'd notice that in the races.
But it's not a feeling that you get that I'm stronger, or it's just something that's going to be there when you need it? I'm trying to figure out what it feels like.
Well, yeah, I mean, you certainly would feel stronger, and you certainly would recover better. You would certainly suffer less. But having said all that, you're still going to suffer it. I mean, you could have, I don't know, you could have gallons of that, and you still have to go out and suffer. I mean, I think it's not as if this era made us robotic and we didn't feel pain and we didn't suffer. I mean, the sport was still damn hard, and you still had to. I mean, I think there's this perception that, and for better or worse, or right or wrong, there's this perception that it was just rigged, quote unquote, and I mean that's just bullshit. It wasn't. It was not a good time, and it was unfortunate, and I wish it would have been different, but. The boys, or all of us, still had to go out and do the work, and still had to. I mean, you saw the tour this summer, for example. I mean, something as simple as just staying on the bike.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to stay on the bike. I mean, you couldn't fall off, you couldn't crash, you couldn't have technical issues. You had to avoid all of that bad luck, and so, it was a component to the sport at the time, but that doesn't mean that all the other components were eliminated or went away or were quote unquote rigged.
He's Lance Armstrong, 7-time tour winner. Do you still get introduced that way? Is it still the correct way to introduce you?
It depends. Dan, I don't know. I mean, when you just said that, it didn't even register. But
do you believe you are?
Yeah, I do, and I don't want to. I don't like arguing and fighting about it. But you ask me if I feel that way, I say yes. But I also know very well that there are many people that don't agree with that, and so I respect that. I understand that, but I mean, I do. Yeah.
Lance Armstrong. When we come back, I'll compare him to Barry Bonds, and you'll get his reaction to that comparison. We'll continue with Lance Armstrong.